The political iceberg that may completely and irrevocably sink the chances of the Republican Party controlling the United States Congress after this upcoming November election is clearly visible to absolutely everyone in the nation except the one man who is supposedly steering their ship. That captain, former President Donald Trump, appears to have already abandoned the command bridge for the architectural drafting room. According to exhaustive, highly detailed polling data released just last week by multiple independent organizations, more than two-thirds of American voters state unequivocally that Donald Trump is not focused nearly enough on the practical daily problems that most Americans face. The cost of living is suffocating working families across the entire nation. The price of essential groceries, housing, and fuel remains a primary source of deep, unrelenting economic anxiety for the middle class. Yet the undisputed leading figure of the Republican Party is not looking at the structural economic realities of the United States of America. Instead, according to internal sources and meticulous political reporting from Axios, Donald Trump is retreating entirely into the isolated comfort of personal vanity projects. He is concentrating heavily on private hobbies that distract him from his terrible, undeniable polling numbers, a stark reality about which he remains in a state of absolute, impenetrable psychological denial. Rather than face the pressing issues of the electorate and formulate a coherent, substantive policy response, Donald Trump frequently pivots to showing his selected visitors detailed architectural renderings of a massive new White House ballroom. He proudly displays a miniature physical model of a planned triumphal arch, a colossal, historically tone-deaf monument dedicated entirely to his own legacy. He repeatedly showcases the luxury design elements for his new Air Force One aircraft, prioritizing aesthetic choices over governmental function. He loudly touts his grand, entirely unrealistic plans for renaming and totally restructuring Dulles International Airport to suit his personal brand. He obsesses over the exact engineering specifications of a new helipad that he insists must be built on the south lawn of the White House. These are clearly not the priorities of a serious political leader who is preparing for a grueling, razor-thin electoral battle. These are the delusions and distractions of an isolated executive arranging the luxury furniture while the political coalition fractures entirely around him. This behavior demonstrates a catastrophic failure of leadership at a time when the conservative movement desperately needs strategic direction and policy focus. If you value independent, fiercely factual investigative journalism that refuses to look away from the uncomfortable truths of our political system, please subscribe to this channel right now so we can continue bringing you the unvarnished reality behind the daily headlines. To understand the true, devastating depth of this political crisis, we must examine the glaring disconnect between the undisputed leader of the Republican Party and the everyday voters he claims to represent. When confronted with the documented reality of his declining popularity and the palpable, measured anger of the American electorate, his response is never one of introspection, humility, or strategy adjustment. His response is total, unapologetic deflection. If you ask Donald Trump about the perilous state of the Republican campaign, and this might genuinely shock anyone who understands basic political accountability, he firmly believes that he is not the problem at all. He recently stated during an interview that he wonders if his loyal supporters will even bother to go out and vote if he is not actively on the ballot, suggesting that he views himself as the sole animating life force of the entire conservative movement. He explicitly claimed that voters are very angry at Republicans, but he insists, without a single shred of empirical evidence, that they are not angry at him. Let us look at his exact, unedited words on this highly revealing matter. He stated, "If I do not run, will those people go out and vote? And that is the one thing I cannot say. I am going to ask them to. The question is, will they vote? Because a lot of them are very angry at Republicans, to be honest with you. Why is that? I do not know. I mean, they are angry at Republicans, but they are not angry at me. But they are angry at Republicans." This public statement is a staggering display of psychological compartmentalization and unprecedented political betrayal. He openly acknowledges the raging electoral fire that is threatening to consume his own political party, but he absolutely refuses to admit that he is the one holding the match. The undeniable truth is that Donald Trump is the one lighting the fire, and he has had an enormous amount of assistance from a compliant political apparatus that has surrendered its independence and its moral authority to his every passing whim. When working families ask why the national economy feels systematically rigged against them, or why the basic necessities of life are stretching their household budgets to the absolute breaking point, the answer is not simply a matter of abstract global market forces. It is directly, inextricably tied to the legislative decisions and political priorities of the very elected officials who are supposed to serve them. The public desperately wants an economy that actually delivers tangible benefits for them, rather than a financial system engineered to deliver exclusively for billionaires and mega-wealthy political donors. Yet, it is abundantly clear from his architectural obsessions that Donald Trump just wants those billionaires inside his imagined White House ballroom. He does not want to engage in the tedious, highly difficult legislative work of addressing the cost of living for ordinary Americans who are crying out for genuine structural help. The macroeconomic conditions facing the American working class have deteriorated to a point of unprecedented financial precarity, leaving families struggling to afford basic necessities while the leader of the opposition party focuses on building a monument to himself. Furthermore, the profound economic pain felt by average citizens is compounded by disastrous foreign policy decisions and legislative failures. You ask why gasoline is so incredibly expensive across the United States of America. It is not just that Donald Trump has taken this country into a disastrous, costly international posture in the past. It is the documented, indisputable fact that every single Republican member of the United States House of Representatives cast the deciding vote to allow ongoing conflicts and economic disruptions to continue unabated without meaningful intervention. There is a massive amount of institutional blame to go around, and the Republican establishment absolutely cannot hide from its own voting record. That is the actual problem that people are furiously angry about. And Donald Trump, along with nearly every Republican in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, shares the total blame for prioritizing corporate tax relief and empty political theater over the material well being and financial security of the American working class. We have seen historical examples of leaders who lose touch with their citizens, retreating into palaces and focusing on grand architectural designs while the populace suffers through inflation and economic stagnation. This level of detachment has always preceded a massive political reckoning. As we transition to examining the highly organized counteroffensive being mounted by the political opposition, I want to remind you that holding powerful government institutions accountable requires relentless independent reporting. Please subscribe to our channel right now so you can directly support our deep dive investigations and ensure that you never miss our continued exhaustive coverage of these vital democratic processes. While the top of the Republican ticket is hyper focused on designing triumphal arches and exclusive presidential helipads, the political opposition is currently organizing with a ruthless, methodical precision that should absolutely terrify conservative campaign strategists. We are currently looking at a fundamental structural asymmetry in national political strategy. To truly understand the approaching electoral storm, we have to look closely at the ongoing ground level work of organizers like Ben Wickler, the former chairman of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, and the respected author of a vital, highly timely new book titled This is the Plan: How to End the Meltdown of America and Save Democracy. What Ben Wickler lays out in this comprehensive text is not just a theoretical academic framework for political science students, it is a highly specific tactical blueprint for the upcoming electoral battle, a battle that is, in stark reality, already well underway in communities across the entire nation. We are currently entrenched in an electoral cycle that closely mirrors the major structural realignments we saw when investigators first began examining the Republican National Committee many years ago. We watched the political establishment get completely blown up in 2006, and we watched it get blown up all over again in 2008 against Barack Obama, when the traditional party structures began to dramatically and publicly fracture. The early ideological seeds of the Tea Party movement were present back then, but they had not really crystallized into a governing majority just yet. There was a massive amount of political unrest roiling violently beneath the surface of the electorate. Today, in pivotal battleground states that sit right on the absolute margin of electoral victory, we are seeing a massive, unprecedented surge in democratic engagement that perfectly mirrors that previous generational shift. There is a tremendous amount of serious discourse regarding exactly where the Democratic Party is headed. What their strategic plan should be fundamentally matters. What the organizational blueprint looks like genuinely matters to the future of the Republic. Consider the recent highly contentious and heavily scrutinized primary elections in the state of Michigan and what we will very likely see unfold in the state of Wisconsin next Tuesday. What we have witnessed on the ground is not simply a routine clash of different candidates presenting slightly different policy platforms. We have seen a profoundly high level of sustained, highly motivated voter engagement. A vastly larger number of Democrats are actively voting in these local primary elections compared to their Republican counterparts. This is a critical, undeniable metric that simply cannot be ignored by anyone analyzing this race. Primary voter turnout is historically a highly accurate leading indicator of general election enthusiasm. The phenomenal organic energy that ordinary citizens bring to these local primary contests translates directly and powerfully into the general election environment. They will roll that exact same momentum right into the autumn months by volunteering their time, knocking on hundreds of thousands of doors, talking directly to their neighbors, and turning out votes at a level we have rarely ever seen in a typical midterm or general election environment. There is significantly more that unites the broad Democratic coalition than divides it. The core economic and social message of their candidates clearly aligns with the vast majority of the American public. The voters are demanding an economy that actually delivers prosperity for working people, not just for those corporate executives sitting comfortably at the very top of the financial pyramid. They desperately want a country that does not plunge recklessly into completely unnecessary foreign wars that not only cost thousands of irreplaceable human lives, but also make everyone else's daily lives dramatically more expensive due to rampant inflation and global resource scarcity. On these fundamental bedrock issues, Democrats across the board are standing right there with the vast majority of the voting public. I firmly believe that the unprecedented, massive energy people are putting into these localized primary battles will absolutely carry right into a massive transformative blue wave this coming fall. However, the most crucial, glaring miscalculation made by the national corporate media and by the Republican leadership apparatus itself is the exclusive, obsessive focus on the very top of the presidential ticket. Elections in this country are almost never won exclusively from the top down, they are won decisively from the bottom up. While the television cameras and the national pundits remain entirely fixed on the United States Senate races and the high profile congressional leadership battles, the true existential war for the future of the United States of America is being waged right now in obscure state legislative chambers. This is the absolute core of the strategic revolution outlined in Ben Wickler's comprehensive blueprint for victory. State legislative bodies will have a gigantic generational effect on the future governance of this nation, especially now that we are in a dangerous season where Donald Trump has actively tried to initiate an aggressive, ruthless gerrymandering war to permanently seize minority control of the United States House of Representatives. The strategy of gerrymandering is not simply a benign administrative process. It is a highly calculated surgical weaponization of the electoral map designed specifically to dilute the voting power of the working class and silence political opposition. By packing and cracking voting districts with absolute mathematical precision, partisan operatives can essentially guarantee their own legislative survival, regardless of the actual popularity of their policies. The only effective antidote to that authoritarian legislative effort is not just winning the presidency, it is winning the state assembly and the state senate. In Wisconsin, there is a legitimate mathematical chance for Democrats to win a controlling majority in both legislative chambers, fundamentally altering the balance of power. The exact same systemic vulnerability for entrenched Republicans exists in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Arizona, in New Hampshire, and in Nevada, where highly motivated voters could secure powerful, transformative Democratic trifectas. Even if you look closely at a state like Iowa, which has strongly looked like a completely safe, impenetrable red state for quite a while, the political ground beneath their feet is rapidly shifting. Dedicated Democratic organizers could realistically flip three United States House of Representatives seats, the state governorship, the office of the state attorney general, a crucial United States Senate seat, and a massive, unprecedented ton of state legislative seats. Why do these seemingly small, highly localized down ballot races matter so incredibly much in the grand scheme of American democratic politics? Because these specific local elected officials play a gigantic outsized role in setting the foundational legal rules of the road for the presidential elections in 2028 and well beyond that timeline. State legislatures dictate the rules for ballot access. State legislatures draw the highly partisan congressional district maps. State legislatures confirm the official electoral votes that decide the presidency. If you truly want to protect the structural integrity of American democracy right now, in this exact moment, you absolutely must focus on the down ballot races that traditional media networks completely and foolishly ignore, but where a localized overperformance could fundamentally change who writes the laws of how American elections actually work. You have got to protect the vulnerable electoral system and not allow partisan operatives to illegally rig it the way that the Republican Party is desperately trying to do at a national level with draconian legislation like the SAVE Act. What we are watching unfold before our very eyes is a slow motion, catastrophic collision between two entirely different political realities. On one side, you have a democratic apparatus that is efficiently channeling genuine voter frustration into methodical, localized, structural political organization. They are building lasting electoral infrastructure, They are adequately funding vital state level candidates. They are capitalizing on the very real economic anxieties of the working class and presenting a unified, formidable political front aimed directly at protecting the mechanics of democracy itself. On the exact opposite side, you have a Republican Party tethered blindly and hopelessly to a detached leader who is obsessing over the architectural aesthetics of a fantasy administration. Donald Trump is busy designing a beautiful triumphal arch while his entire political foundation is rapidly crumbling beneath his feet. This is not merely a standard failure of political leadership, it is a historic, catastrophic abdication of responsibility. When a political leader deliberately surrounds himself exclusively with wealthy sycophants, when he fixates on a theoretical presidential helipad instead of the very real, painful rising costs at the local grocery store, he sends a clear, undeniable, chilling message to the American electorate. The message is that their daily financial suffering simply does not register on his personal radar. The anger that Donald Trump openly acknowledges among the voters is entirely real, but his arrogant, narcissistic belief that he is somehow magically immune from its political consequences is a dangerous, historically fatal political delusion. He is the distracted captain of a rapidly sinking lifeboat, and he is entirely the wrong guy you want in charge of your survival when the freezing waters begin to rise over the deck. The ultimate tragedy is that the Republican establishment tied themselves completely and willingly to his heavy anchor, and now they are going down with the ship while the rest of the country watches helplessly from the shoreline. We will continuously and aggressively investigate the structural realities of this unprecedented election cycle, holding the powerful fully accountable with unyielding, fact driven journalism. If you believe in the crucial importance of this kind of exhaustive, uncompromising reporting, please subscribe to the channel right now so you can stand with us and follow every major development as this historic political battle reaches its absolute breaking point.